4, 3, 2.
Welcome to Westchester Jewish Community Services. As a leading agency in providing a comprehensive spectrum of human services, we have been helping people since 1943. We serve all people in Westchester County, regardless of age, income, or ethnicity. We provide a wide variety of essential and dynamic services that make a difference in people's lives. Children, teens, adults, and senior citizens are served by our network of programs located throughout the county. When people come to us for assistance, they become part of the WJCS family. Our highly trained and skilled staff focus on you and your family and are committed to becoming your partner in finding solutions. For more than half a century, we have been connecting people to services that help them overcome mental, physical, or emotional challenges. WJCS is here in your community when you need us.
Welcome to the Ways We Care of Westchester Jewish Community Services. I'm Dale Wang, Director of Community Relations. WJCS is funded by UJA Federation, United Way, government grants, private individuals, foundations, and corporations. The month of December always brings a special mix of joys and stresses. Probably beginning with Thanksgiving celebrations, people start to prepare for the holiday season with both anticipation and dread. Thoughts of family gatherings, crowded stores, and school vacations all can help to make the season less than bright. This year, too, we are experiencing additional concerns and trying to make sense out of an unusually threatening and uncertain world. As we look toward the holidays, we may need some assistance in coping with the unique challenges of December and the particularly difficult issues that may confront us at the end of a disturbing 2001. To help sort out some of the potential problems and to try to plan for successful ways to cope with holiday times, we have asked two WJCS social workers to share their perspectives. I'd like to introduce and welcome Charlotte Blumenthal, who is a therapist at our Hartsdale Mental Health Clinic. Welcome, hello. Charlotte. And Charlotte works with adults and children. And Basha Kinglake, who is coming back to our show again. Basha is director of WJCS's Family Matters program, which helps children who have serious emotional problems and offers comprehensive services to their families. Let's begin. I'd like to talk together. Let's begin talking about the situation that's sometimes called the holiday blues. Obviously, for many people, December can be both the best of times and the worst of times. What are some of the triggers that make this period so hard for so many people?
Well, I think that for a lot of people, the holidays are very stressful because it means increased responsibilities, meaning if you work, now in addition to your job, you have to go shopping for presents, you have to get together with people many times, much more than in your regular social life. If you have kids, the kids are home for the holidays. They don't go to school, so you have to worry about making plans for them if you work especially. And there are financial stresses. There are increased financial responsibilities as well as increased social responsibilities and family responsibilities. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a big part of it.
I think I'd like to add that for many families, the holidays are a time where you are aware of, or you become aware of those losses in your family, things that are not going right. I think oftentimes the media portrays the holidays as this, wonderful, beautiful event that takes place with everybody getting together and everybody getting on well. But for many families, the reality is that, there's a loss, maybe they're, lost a parent or a child. And I think it triggers a lot of feelings of those losses, and also just in terms of expectations You know, the media portrays the things a certain way, and yet, for whatever reason, whether it be you're struggling with a mental illness, or you're struggling with financial constraints, unemployment, whatever it is, you can't meet those expectations. So I think it really is a very stressful time for many of the families that we work with.
Mm-hmm. And I think also there's this feeling, there's this portrayal of family, and for many people, that family time is not all that happy.
Exactly.
There are stresses within the families, and then family may not mean the same thing to everybody.
And then there are lots of people who don't have families, so that then they feel like, what's wrong with me that I don't have what's portrayed in the media as being the perfect family.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about the commercialization of this season. I think you hit on it a little bit, but Basha, you especially work with families that are, you know, really struggling in normal times. You know, what effect does this have on?
I was
on
actually
your
just
family?
thinking of what I mentioned before the show, how today, you know, we were focusing a little bit on Turkey Run, picking up food. We got some food donated. I think, again, I think it's the expectations as portrayed in the media, and that you should have a certain thing in place, food, certain toys. You go into a store now and it's all marketed around the holidays. And I think for families where there's not the money coming in and they don't have the financial resources, it's extremely difficult. So that's really what I think the commercialization is extremely difficult for families to meet, to really go that extra distance in terms of meeting those needs, or really living up to what's portrayed in the media.
And of course, we've also been hit with images of people standing on lines looking for jobs.
Right.
And at a time when that's...
I was just actually, I read in the newspaper in the New York Times yesterday that in October there was an increase by 80,000 of the number of people who are unemployed, and over a 5% increase in unemployment that month in October, which is an incredibly large number of people who are not going to have jobs. And the effect that that has in terms of a family is really powerful. Money and emotional depression.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and you have this image that you, even if you don't have a job, you need to put something
On the
under that
table.
tree or on the table
Right.
to celebrate the
Right.
holidays. Let's also talk just a little bit about what happens when those children are out of school. What are the special stresses at that time? Because there are so many more working mothers and single mothers and parents who are not available. How does this affect their daily lives in those couple of weeks?
Well, first of all, I mean, I don't know what age kids you work with, but depending on the age of the kids, I mean, a lot of kids get left at home alone, and we know that that's definitely a problem. But there are more and more organizations that do arrange, I believe, to have activities during the holidays. I know that YMHA in Scarsdale arranges like a camp during vacation. I'm sure that there must be schools that probably arrange trips or other activities for kids who are left home without parents. But clearly I think that supervision of kids during vacation is a difficult issue, especially for families where both parents or the single parent works.
So you not only
totally agree.
have the regular stress of every
Right.
day,
Right.
you have
Right.
this
Right.
sense that you have to go to work and your
Right.
children are going to be
Right.
unattended.
And there's often in many of the communities, in environments of poverty, there's really not the same level of resources available to families to meet the needs of childcare during that period of time. It's really, it's helpful to talk to families about, you know, thinking ahead and planning ahead about what are you going to do during that
Right.
week. Do you have some family person or a neighbor who could just step in and take care of the kids? It's very hard because again, our families are trying to work and move into the work world, and yet they have kids who are, you know, need to be taken care of and supervised during the vacations.
Right. You hit on this a little bit. This year had some additional stresses, not only the World Trade Center attacks, which I want to talk about in a second, but it's the end of a 5-year period for many of the families that you work with that were affected by welfare reform. Can you talk a little bit about how this will begin to impact people in our county?
In 1996, under President Clinton, there was a move to help families become more self-sufficient and move into the work world. And I think it was a great idea. At that time, no one thought that there would be a recession, which is what we're really moving into. And the idea was that families would be able to go into the work world, and there would be this limit, a 5-year limit. That 5-year limit reaches the end December 1st. And so some of the families who have been on welfare will no longer be entitled to welfare. Instead, there'll be another program which will be in place called Safety Net. It'll be different criteria, and you have to make sure that, families have to make sure that the transition is a smooth one and do what they need to do in terms of recertifying. But the concern is, with the current economic climate, exasperated by what happened on September 11th, and I think generally there was a general recession prior to that, that a lot of families are really not going to be able to move into the work world. There's not going to be the level, the jobs available to them, and some of those that have managed to transition into the work world are now going to be struggling because they may be, I think, probably the first ones who'll be laid off. So I don't think there was an anticipation of what a recession would look like. So families are feeling very stressful. It's going to look differently in terms of the amount of monies that they are given by the month. They are still, and I say this very clearly, are still entitled to Medicaid and food stamps, and they need to just make sure that those entitlements are still in place for them. But it's creating a lot of stress and anxiety because it's a change. And for many of our families who are very fragile, I think it's going to be hard.
Yes, and I think people are afraid that they won't be eligible for benefits and don't really understand or know how to go about applying for the new system.
And I think as service providers, we're still not totally sure, so we need to also become better informed and really understand better the transition and what's in place. So there's a lot of anxiety that it's creating, and we're going to be working hard to try and deal with that.
Right.
On the other hand, the government seems to come up with all kinds of new help because of the September 11th tragedy, and also because of the recession that has gotten worse because of September 11th. So I just heard today on the radio that President Bush announced $1 billion as help for homeless families and for people who need more
because we have seen an increase in the number of homeless families.
Yes, they just had reported that today, that there was a tremendous increase in the number of homeless families, and I think we're beginning to see it on our streets as well.
Right. So hopefully the government will respond by realizing that the problems have increased since September 11th.
Right. Well, in addition to those issues for September 11th, I think, are you also seeing people who are talking about increased, obviously we hear about it, increased anxiety in terms of traveling, in terms of shopping?
As a matter of fact, yesterday I did an assessment with a new client who seems to have quite a functional life. I mean, she works, she's married, she has kids, basically she functioned pretty well. She works a few blocks away from the World Trade Center, so that she saw the whole tragedy develop. And since then, she has had a real difficult time going back to the Wall Street area, to her job. And she definitely suffers from not just the trauma because of what she saw, but depression that she was suffering from before has gotten a lot worse, and I think that that's so typical of what we see since September 11th.
So problems are really exacerbated.
Yes, people are afraid
Whatever
to
people
go.
are struggling with, if you have someone who may be a little slightly paranoid in their thinking, I feel like it's gotten worse. People who tend to be depressed have become more isolated. If there's any substance abuse or alcohol abuse, we've noticed an increase in the number of people. Yeah, so whatever people are struggling with, it seems to be exacerbated.
Right. Let's try to talk a little bit about how people can begin to overcome some of these issues, because now they're going to be in family relationships, they're going to be in holiday celebrations. How do you help them overcome these anxieties?
Well, one of my favorite ways of thinking is in terms of dividing issues or problems in terms of problems that you have control over and problems you don't have control over. And I think we all realize that we don't have any control over the political issues that are going on, or about events like September 11th. On the other hand, if we focus on things that are close to our lives, such as family, work, we do have a lot of control. And trying to focus on those issues, meaning dialoguing with yourself about what your options are regarding things that you do have control over, and then trying to explore and make choices that make you feel more relaxed, less anxious. I think it's something that makes sense. So it's really a matter of internal dialogue, being honest with yourself about what's bothering you. Can you do something about it? Is this in your control? And then if the answer is yes, trying to explore what options you have available in dealing with the issue, and then trying to make the choices that can make you feel more relaxed and less upset with the situation.
I'd like to add to that. I think I love the way you said that. I think sometimes just thinking about and talking to your clients about, what do you really want to get out of the holiday, and really thinking about what the intent is, whether it be to sort of touch base more with your cultural roots, whether it be to spend more time with your family, and then really keeping that idea or that intent so that it really guides you. And then as much as you can, plan ahead and simplify. And really, as you said, really focus on those things that make you feel better, and do more of them. Right. If you feel good having a bath, a hot bath or a shower, going for a walk, talking, eating a great meal, whatever it is, cooking, for me it's, doing yoga, whatever it is, do more of that, because I think it's a way of helping you cope. But I think understanding that and making those connections are really important.
Right. So even if people have difficult relationships within their families, they can choose how they want to, how to deal with it that puts them in control.
Right.
Well, I think, for example, if it's a matter of difficult relationships in the family, maybe you need to ask yourself, what do I want to get out of, let's say, going to be with my family on Thanksgiving? And if you realize that you want to have a good time, but you don't like your sister-in-law, then maybe you need to say, okay, what can I do? Can I change my sister-in-law? Did I choose her? Clearly not. But if you want to have a good time, then you try to say, okay, let me forgive, forget, ignore, focus on other people in the family who I do like, and still end up having a good time, as opposed to get yourself miserable about something that is really not in your power to change.
And Basha, how about those people who don't have family or that idealized version? Is there a way that they can broaden their scope, maybe include community or find a different?
I think helping people to make those connections is very important, to identify who it is, who is a support to them, who is the person that you call when you're having a rough time. And just sort of verbalizing that, having that discussion, and saying, okay, so you have a good time when you talk to that person, why don't you, do that on a regular basis right now if it's feeling very stressful. So really helping people think through what works for them, because it's very individualized. And then, making them really think about, again, what their intent is, what they'd like to get out of the holidays, what's important to them. Is it, getting together as a family, or is it, is it that big pile of presents? And people will invariably say, no, it's to do with family, it's to do with friends, it's to having those times, and really sort of helping them conceptualize that better.
I would also add that clearly, because of the media, we have this view of the perfect family, and maybe it would be helpful for people to know that you really don't know if your neighbors have a perfect family, or if the people, you know, in the next apartment have a perfect family, because what you see from outside and what people really experience are two different things. So maybe people really need to know that there are not too many perfect families, that everybody has problems. And as far as people who are alone, I guess I'm looking at it in terms of what can you do to make you feel good. And I think that volunteering and doing something for someone who is even more helpless or more alone than you are can help. And there are so many opportunities, you know, soup kitchens, the elderly who need Meal on Wheels, I think it's called. So there are ways to give to other people that then makes you feel so much better.
Right.
And it makes you feel not alone, really.
Right. We'll be talking about that in the second half, too, about how people can volunteer and
back.
move outside of their own immediate group. But I think one thing, too, I think you had mentioned it, Basha, that some of the community groups offer some opportunities. Family Ties, you said, has
Family
a holiday.
Ties has a wonderful holiday party, and it's held at Andrus, and it's an opportunity to party, and there's no gifts, which I think is great. It's an opportunity to meet other families, to eat great food, and for the kids to be involved in some sort of very healthy holiday activities. You know, collage, painting, lots of dancing.
And I think we also have to remember that these holidays are based in religious celebrations too, so that the churches and the synagogues and community groups do offer opportunities for communal celebration, and that there is a gathering place at this time.
I think that's very important, especially given September 11th, that we offer our families that we work with opportunities to really connect with other families through their faith, whatever it is. So we encourage that and support that. The spiritual side of the holidays is important.
Right. Let's talk for a minute about how people can get beyond using the materialism and maybe be creative. Aside from volunteering, what else can people do to find meaningful ways to express their appreciation and love for family members or friends without spending a fortune?
I have a preference here. I love to cook. I mean, I think cooking is often a wonderful way and it has so many purposes. I think it's a nurturing activity. It's also an opportunity to share your culture. So I would always put cooking out there on the table as an opportunity to really do something differently. And it's a family gathering or a community gathering or a friend gathering. So that's one thing I suggest to people. Again, it's very individualized because some people may not want to go near a kitchen around the holidays. So
but there are other things they can do.
Yeah.
Well, there are lots of things that people can make versus going and buying. It might require a little more time and effort, but it might be more meaningful to them as well as to the people who receive it. But to add to what you said, for me, cooking is really a gesture of love. And maybe too, if you make something, even to be verbally assertive enough and say, you know, this is my way of loving you, by giving them something that's personally, you know, made, handmade. I don't know if people would feel comfortable doing that, but
well, I think that you know, if you can get beyond the fact that you have to buy something to show appreciation and love for someone, then it opens a whole range of creative possibilities.
And everybody may have a different way of doing that. I mean, I was thinking of actually someone just saying, oh, let's just go for a walk.
right.
Or, you know, walk in the way, anything.
Right.
It's just
Or
an
just
opportunity to
spending
spend
time
some time
together, you know, just saying, I would like to be with you.
Right.
And how would you like us to spend the time together?
Right.
And I'm
Maybe-
actually thinking, in a way, the events of September 11th have allowed us to actually think a little bit more clearly about what's important in our lives. So this is an opportunity to really look at things with more clarity and try and sort of do them. It's an opportunity to do that.
Right.
What's important in our lives.
Right. I'd love to have just 2 minutes from you about yoga, because
Okay.
I know that exercise is one of the great ways to reduce stress, reduce tension, and there's been a good focus on yoga as a way of not only being good for the body but the mind. And I know you're a yoga instructor, so maybe you could tell us about it.
I think yoga is really a union between the spirit, the mind, and the breath, and the body. And so I think for me, and I'm talking about this very personally, but as I teach classes, I feel it's the same for many people. It's an opportunity just to feel more balanced, and there is a clarity that comes with yoga. And it's also, you know, in terms of the physical activity, it enables you to, it's a strength building activity, and it's also definitely good for your stamina. But in terms of the more sort of spiritual component to it, it does allow opportunities to have more clarity in your thinking and to prioritize. And by focusing on your breath, it also allows you just to shut down everything else that's going on in that crazy mind that just chatters constantly. So there's lots of different components to it, and I would suggest people try it. There's different types of yoga. Some focus more on meditation, some are much more oriented towards physical activity. So again, find the person that's going to, you know, meet your needs if you want to try it.
And is this something readily available to people? Would it be,
It's available in various communities. I think if you just look up either the internet or your phone book, it says, you know, yoga studios. There's a large number of yoga teachers throughout the county. And it's definitely become very busy and very active, and it's a nice community too.
Right. Well, you won't believe it, but your time is up. And I know it goes very fast, and I just want to give people telephone numbers so that if they are finding that they can't overcome these feelings of depression and you know, of loss or helplessness and loneliness at this time. Charlotte, the number at the clinic is
949-6761.
949-6761. If you call WJCS, we'll be able to connect you. I want to thank you both for your insights and for helping people to deal with what can be a stressful time. I'd like people to also know that WJCS will be running a Have a Heart for the Holidays program, and that we collect information from various families that we work with about what they'd like to have for the holidays. And if you'd like to help us provide those gifts, you can call Merrill Lewis at 761-0600, extension 222, and we will connect you with some families who, for whom you can brighten the holidays. If you stay tuned, we'll be talking about volunteering and other ways to make your holiday and the holidays of others a happy one. Thank you. Welcome back to the Ways We Care of Westchester Jewish Community Services. I'm Dale Wang, Director of Community Relations. WJCS is funded by UJA Federation, United Way, government grants, private individuals, foundations, and corporations. As the holiday season approaches, people tend to get caught up in the stresses of shopping, in entertaining, in dealing with kids or the extended family, and they begin to look toward the holidays with dread rather than eager anticipation. In our first segment, we talked with two social workers about the concerns of the times and how to reduce tension and find positive outlets that are satisfying. In this half, we will look at volunteering, not only as a possible antidote to the December doldrums, but as a way of feeling good about yourself and helping others all year long. I'd like to welcome for this part of the program Merrill Lewis, who is WJCS's Coordinator of Volunteer Resources. Welcome, Merrill. Judith Christopher, who is a volunteer with our Compeer program and also Director of the Donald Reed Speech and Hearing Center at Phelps Hospital. Welcome to you, Judith. And Linda Levine, who is a volunteer with our Claudette House, part of Community Residential Care, and a volunteer with many other organizations. So welcome, Linda.
Thank you.
I thank you all for joining us. No matter what one's faith or background may be, the holidays often pose difficult challenges of connecting with family, dealing with not having family, coping with commercialism of the season, and feeling that in a time of joy, one may not be feeling particularly joyful. This particular year, having experienced the World Trade Center attacks, it became very poignant that when people felt most afraid and most powerless, they turned to what they could do to help regain control over their worlds. In unprecedented numbers, people gave blood, donated money, and gave time to feed firefighters and police officers. Recognizing that December holiday observances often make people feel uncomfortable and out of control, we wanted to try to build upon that dynamic that encouraged people to give of themselves during the recent crisis and offer ways in which it might help you to feel good and do good now and throughout the year. So, I'm going to turn to you, Meryl, to give us a little bit of an idea of the range of opportunities available for people who choose WJCS as an agency that they'd like to give their time to.
Fine. Well, one of the wonderful things I think about WJCS is that because we are such a large agency offering so many and diverse programs, we, as I liken it, we're something like a menu in a restaurant. If you come to volunteer at WJCS, and you want to work with children, then we can place you in one of our programs that works with children. If you want very, very small children, babies, if you want to hold or cuddle babies, we can give you that. If your preference is to work more with the fragile elderly, we've got something for you there. So we do have something for everyone. And in addition to that, we have time-wise, whatever time you want to give, whether it's once a week, twice a week, or perhaps just an occasional volunteer day, we have opportunities for you. So there's really something for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Now, do people have to know what they want to do? I think so many people say, I really want to volunteer. I don't know what I can do.
No, I think that just the will, the need to volunteer is to give your time to someone else is the most important motivation. Call me on the phone. We will find where your interests lie, and we will sift through the many opportunities, and we will find the perfect volunteer opportunity for you. Yesterday I was just reminded that a friend of mine who is 90, who is still a volunteer at 90, gave me a wonderful quote for Thanksgiving, which was, "You may only be one person in the world, but to one person you may be the world." And I think that we have a large number of people who are very lonely at the holidays, and just to have a friendly voice or a friendly visit or someone bringing over some food, you might be that one person in the world to that person.
Mm-hmm. So let me just go through in terms of the different divisions that we have, what kinds of things might be available. Obviously, one of our major areas is dealing with people with mental health issues. And if people are willing to work with others who have had some emotional problems or mental health problems, could you give a little bit of an idea about what kinds of things might be available?
Of course. We have, of course, the Compeer program, which is a one-on-one program, which matches individuals with other individuals who are recovering from a serious mental illness. Very often, a serious mental illness will isolate the person so that they're really very uncomfortable going out again in public, interacting with people. They're unsure of their intimacy skills. Having a person come in and say, "Hi, I'm your buddy. We're going to have coffee once a week," or or sharing your interests with another individual. We're going to go to a concert once a week. I interviewed someone recently who had a very serious mental illness and had spent quite a number of years in the hospital, and his volunteer, who has been coming for 3 years every Saturday, has opened up a whole new world to this gentleman. He takes him to the concerts. He takes him, he's even taken him up to Lenox to
Tanglewood.
Tanglewood. You know, he's really, and in describing the volunteer, the gentleman said to me, I don't know what I would have done without him. He is my best buddy. There isn't a bad bone in his body. You know, such a tribute is really very touching. And so
we'll be talking with Judith, who's involved
That's
with
just
that
one
program.
of the many programs we have, which is one-on-one.
Right, and then the day treatment programs also afford opportunities for people who have certain skills or talents, or even just want to participate with some people who are recovering from mental
Absolutely.
illness. Okay, and then in another area we have our community residential facilities. And I know we'll be talking to Linda about that, but could you give an idea of how people can participate if they are willing to work with people who have had developmental disabilities?
Well, in these houses, we have many opportunities for people on the weekends and the evenings. It's difficult very often for people who volunteer to volunteer during the day because of their work schedule. But in the houses, we do have lots of opportunities on the weekends, and they can be as simple as coming in and planning a barbecue and a volleyball game in one of the houses, or coming in and teaching chess one night and bringing in some pizza. I mean, food is always related. I mean, food is great.
Right.
Love, food and love. And it's special for these residents if you bring in something special. So there are lots of opportunities if you want to visit one person, or if you want a group. You can do a group activity. We've had people come in and do baking cookies at holiday time with some of the residents. So there are many, many opportunities.
And I guess lastly, although it's a little bit more difficult in terms of the one-on-one through our Home Health Services Division, I think people might be able to be connected for bringing food baskets and things of that sort to people who are isolated or homebound. Is that how that works?
Yes, or we always need people who are retired nurses to assist in certain areas. So, and of course, we forgot to mention the mentoring part, because mentoring is a real biggie. We have lots of opportunities for people who would like to mentor. We were talking with Basha before, and her program always needs mentors for teens who have some emotional issues and who really need a solid person in the community to take them out for a few hours a week. We also have a different start where you can become a mentor and a tutor to girls, single moms who are studying for their GED. We have the Learning Center where you can become a tutor. As I said, there really is something for everyone. Mentoring, tutoring, friendly visitors, activities assistance.
Right. And you don't need any special training necessarily.
No,
I mean,
just a good heart.
Right. And in many of these programs, people will be trained in the initial skills that they need.
Always. Supervisors will always train the volunteer in whatever skill they need, and they will be supervised.
Okay, let's talk to some real live volunteers. Judith, you've been working with the Compere program, and we had a little bit of an introduction into that. What brought you into that program, and what are you actually doing as a Compere volunteer?
Well, I think it's interesting from what Meryl said. I had the need to volunteer, but I was completely unfocused. I had absolutely no idea in what kind of capacity I could be useful. And so I happened to be at a program where there was a representative from Westchester Jewish Council and myself, and I got to talking to her, and she listed all of the many opportunities that were a possibility for volunteering. And I didn't ever really think that I would volunteer with anyone who had some kind of mental condition. This was not my thought initially. But the idea kind of intrigued me. So I thought, well, I'll just I'll just sign on and see how it goes. And I've been doing it for 1.5 years, and it makes me feel very useful. I can give time and I can give companionship, and that's what I've been doing. I haven't been able to do it on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, because I work full-time, and I also, my friend does not live very close to where I live. And so we have settled into a routine of once every 2 to 3 weeks of seeing one another, and we do things that are enjoyable to both of us. And I think that I provide something that she doesn't have in any of her other relationships, whether it's with her family, or with her counselor, or with other kinds of groups that she attends with people who have similar illnesses. I provide a real solid base for her to bounce ideas off of, and though it's not therapeutic, I do take every opportunity I can to praise her for her initiative, for complimenting her in ways that she is trying to function as independently as possible. And I don't think that she would have that from anybody else. So we enjoy things together on the one hand, so and that's fun. But it's also the satisfaction of being able to know that I'm giving her something unique, that she wouldn't get otherwise.
Well, how lucky she is. When you talked initially about not thinking about doing this with people who had mental illness, can you talk about how you got over that initial fear of doing that, or that initial discomfort? Because I think one of the things we grapple with so many of our programs is that our clients are different. They may have had emotional difficulties, mental health issues. They may have been developmentally delayed and mentally retarded. And there's a stigma about that. But how did you overcome that?
Well, I must say that it probably is attributed to the person who I am paired with. It really took no trouble at all. It was just an initial response to, in my particular professional life, I could have chosen to work with an emotionally disturbed population, and I just never did. It was not something that I felt an affinity for. And so because I didn't know it, I was perhaps somewhat fearful of it. However, my first meeting with her completely dispelled any apprehension that I might have felt. And it became a non-issue. It never was, we don't talk about her illness. I don't think I even know what the diagnosis is. I know that she has needs to talk about herself and her world rather than to be able to extend herself into my world. And so I just take that lead and follow whatever it is that she needs to have. And it really turned into be a non-issue.
Well, I think that's very important for people to hear, because so many of the people have been depressed, or they've had other issues that are not very different from things that most people experience, but it's just to a greater degree. And to see somebody and realize that this person isn't all that different is very important.
Yes, the person is not the diagnosis. Right. You meet them on a one-to-one human level and just evolve.
Right. Can you just talk for a minute about the training that was given to you in order to be able to do this, what you had to do or what you went through?
Well, it was really, it was comprehensive, but it was also minimal in terms of the amount of time commitment. I met with one of the volunteers for an hour, I guess an hour and a half, and she talked a little bit about the program and what the expectations were, talked about the, I guess the safety features in case I would run into any difficulties, how to handle that, stressed the idea that it was a companionship and not a therapy that I was signing on for, and made me feel very comfortable in what was ahead of me.
And I think too that WJCS has the backup if there is an issue. There are therapists, and Ann Lorton, the Compeer director, certainly works to pick up any problems. And you know
That's
that
right.
we
You
can
don't
avoid
feel,
that.
you certainly don't feel alone in your volunteering. You know that there is always someone to call on. It just has not happened in my particular relationship.
Right.
It hasn't been necessary.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Linda, let's talk a little bit about where you are and what you are doing. You're at Claudette House,
That's
which
right.
is one of our group homes for people who are mentally retarded and developmentally disabled. How did you get there, and what are you involved with?
I got there through some friends and neighbors who evidently were very familiar with the work of the WJCS. And I initially went in on a one-to-one basis to interact with one of the consumers. But then I wanted to broaden it, so I invited the group together. And I found, though, after a while, discussion didn't quite sit so well because they didn't have the attention span. But being involved personally with music, I thought I'd bring music to them. And once I did that, everything opened up. And we got a lot more involvement, a lot more excitement about it, and participation.
Mm-hmm. So give us an idea of what you do, how you bring your music and your love of music to people, because I think it's just magical sometimes how music opens up things
It
that
does.
Dialogue and conversation just would never do.
Well, first of all, people who may not remember what they had for breakfast will remember every old song. And they know the lyrics to so many of them. And I usually prepare a list of about 18, 20 songs, but I always know there are going to be a lot of requests right in the middle. Take me out to the ball game, hello Dolly. And my husband accompanies me, and it's wonderful because he can play anything. So we just
And he's the
fly.
pianist,
He
right?
certainly
Right.
is. And we were able to get a very nice used piano for the house. And that has made all the difference in the world. And we're going to expand the program by having another group come into that facility so we can deal with more than one body of people. So we'll have this group of songs, and I bring in a lot of props. For example, I'll put up something like this, and either my husband will play the introduction to the song, or I'll look, I say, what do you think this song's about? And they say, oh, that's a pretty baby. Ah, that's what it is. And then we start to sing Pretty Baby. And then I say, what is this person doing? You know, and we'll get into discussion on that. And, oh, she's smiling. When you're smiling. And then we go on, when you're laughing. So there's connections between these stimuli. And what about this? What do you think's going on here? And talk about great affection and always. I'll be loving you always. And these are songs that are dear to them, and it sort of brings them a little closer. I also have some props where they can handle them themselves. If we're doing in the good old summertime, we'll have fans so everybody can cool off. If we're doing Singing in the Rain, I'll bring an umbrella and walk around to each one and cuddle up a little bit with them. So we have a bit of a routine. And one of the sweetest things, I think, is that at the end of each session, there's always hugs and kisses to begin with, but toward the end, I started doing Good Night Ladies, and they said, no, no. And then I realized I take their hands, good night, Judith, good night, Merrill, and go around the table. They love it. It's just so personal.
Right, right. Well, you had talked about that need for connection and how what you do helps them to connect and to connect with you.
And to each other. I notice sometimes we're singing and one person will put his hand down on another consumer's hand too. So that's very touching, very touching.
You know, when you talk, you just light up, so I can imagine how much they enjoy being with you. What got you involved in volunteering, and what does it do for you?
Well, let's put it this way. I come from a very nurturing family. My mother took care of her sisters. She had 5 sisters. And when my mother became ill in the 1970s, I took over that role. And I was also working then, and when I gave up my full-time job, I decided to look into various organizations and see how I could help. So I only found 6, and I work at all of them.
I was looking at your list.
Yes, but I like people, and I'm very comfortable with them, so I work at WJCS in that capacity with music. I work at Scarsdale Family Counseling on a friendly visitor program. Jewish Braille Society, I do tapings of books of Jewish interest. I go to the Children's Hospital in Valhalla, and I do an open book intergenerational program where we read to youngsters and encourage reading and library book participation. And I also work for New York City Opera in season for one of their programs, and as an arts ambassador in Westchester Arts Council. That's part of what I do.
Right. Well,
but I love it all.
Thinking about it.
I love it all.
I think they're just so lucky to have you.
Thank
and
you.
obviously it makes you glow, so
Oh,
you
yes.
must feel good about
I
doing
do.
this.
Shall I just tell you what these
Yes,
bells are
let's
sitting
do
here
the bells,
for?
and then I'm going to get back to
Well,
Meryl.
every time I come, I bring some props, and I promised everyone that next time I come, I'm coming with bells on. So for the holidays, we will all share some wonderful joy.
Okay, well, I'm sure you're going to bring lots of joy to the houses for the holiday season, and thank you so much for what you do. Meryl, I want you to talk a little bit about, very quickly, the holiday gift drive that we're having at WJCS.
Yes. We are giving to our clients, about 800 of our children and adults, certainly at least one gift each, because these are people probably who would have no gifts during the holiday time, especially this holiday. For those who would like to actually adopt a child or a family, I can provide them with the specifics if they give me a call at 761-0600, extension 222. I can provide them with an individual, the size of the individual, and what the gift requested is. If they would like to take more than one person, I can give them as many as they would like. And the gifts are brought to me unwrapped, and we will provide the parents with the gift so that they can have the pleasure of wrapping it and presenting it to their child. So we're hoping by December 15th to have all 800 gifts in my office, and then different program directors will pick up the gifts. I just have one quote,
Okay.
which refers a little bit to what Linda was talking about, and it's a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson, that it's one of the beautiful compensations of this life that none can sincerely try to help another without helping himself. And I think that's the essence of volunteerism.
Especially at this time, that you know, if we reach out beyond ourselves, very often it's so much more satisfying, not only to the person that we're helping, but to ourselves as well. And it makes you see the world beyond yourself, which I think when we're dealing with all the other stresses of the season, it's very important to do that. Meryl, if people are interested in volunteering, could you just give the number again? And
Yes, the number is 914-761-0600, extension 222. I will call you back, and there's an application procedure, very simple. Come in for an interview, and we will take it from there. And if families would like to volunteer, I have opportunities for families as well, because I feel very strongly that children look to their parents, and volunteerism starts very, very young, imparting the idea that it is our responsibility to help others. That is just part of who we are. So when children see parents doing this, perhaps they will grow up and be future volunteers.
right, okay, well, thank you, all of you, so much for what you do and for your time and energies for WJCS, and Meryl for helping to recruit and place all those people who are helping all of
Pleasure.
the people. I'd just like to let people know again, picking up on our first session, that if you are experiencing any difficulties in coping with the season or with any stresses throughout the year, you can give us a call at 761-0600, and we will connect you with counseling services or any other support services that you may need. And you can call 761-0600, extension 222, to volunteer your time. I wish you all a calm, peaceful, and enjoyable holiday season, and best wishes for the new year.